Hey, everybody, and welcome back to the Hunt the Wild podcast. I'm your host, Adam Bowlds, and today we are joined with Jason Campbell. This is episode 8. Appreciate you coming on, Jason, and taking the time. I know it's late, and we both had to make adjustments to the schedule, I'm sure. But how are you doing?
Doing well. Outside of it being a little rainy today, it's been looking forward to sitting down with you and kind of getting into a few of the questions and a little bit, you know, talk a little whitetail and hopefully give some good information to help some of the viewers out.
Good stuff. I want to have you introduce yourself and let everybody kind of know who you are, maybe a little bit of your background. I'm sure people have heard of you in the past, but maybe some of our listeners haven't. So, could you tell us kind of where you're from, some of the big bucks you're killing? I don't know.
Um, okay, so I am a Michigan resident. Um, Pretty much grew up hunting uh, heavily hunted, pressured, public pieces here in Michigan, um, with the mentality of, I don't want to say if it's brown, it's down, but kind of that mentality. Any legal deer was a successful season. And once I kind of turned the corner and decided that I was going to start chasing a better quality animal, um, I I got on the Hunting Beast website, um, and I was Whitetail Assassin on there. Um, I briefly worked and made friends with Dan and Fault and a few of the Hunting Beast guys there. I did a podcast with them on the Extreme Whitetail Tactics with Mario and those guys. And back then when the Beast was just a forum, on the huntingbeast.com, um, it was a place that a lot of killers could go, and even new people, and learn tactics and really be able to reach out and pick the brains of a lot of guys that had been successful at doing it. And there was some amazing content that was coming out with a lot of guys that most people probably would have never even heard of. Um, and and then that kind of pushed me into the idea. Like, I think most hunters always love the idea of like filming or trying to do something like on their own. I grew up watching like the Dan Fitzgerald movies and Real Tree, like, and Drury's and Mossy Oak, like when those were really the only things out there to watch, and always was drawn to that aspect, of the hunting, not just hunting them, but like filming your endeavors. And after a lot of discussion on the Hunting Beast and helping a lot of newer hunters and even older hunters but newer to the mobile style hunting, um, I decided to start my own um, social media slash uh, web page, YouTube channel, which is From Bed to Dead. And basically it was all about just trying to help people, talk whitetails, whether they, all levels of hunters, whether they were new hunters, successful hunters. But it was just a platform in which guys could share their endeavors. I would share mine. I would try to get into detail about like taking photos of all the terminology that a lot of guys use online, what it actually meant. And in that process, um, I was introduced to Cody DeQuisto, and him and I hit it off right away. We're still friends to this day. Um, and he introduced me to his dad, Andre, and Lone Wolf Custom Gear. And after a lot of discussions back and forth. I actually went to work with those guys, where I was um, helping them with their Lone Wolf custom gear products, getting them out, assembling, overseeing a lot of the uh, production, taking stuff to the anodizer, etc. Just wanted to help out in any way I could, even though it wasn't my brand, or my name, legacy. Just really, the main part of it was for me is I always dreamed of working in the hunting industry, not necessarily so much like in the mainstream media to do something that was like, be famous, but everybody dreams of working for a company that they respect, or they believe in, and making it their own and being able to help them achieve and reach their goals and somehow find a place in that. And that's really all I wanted to do was just hopefully turn it into a career. um, and and then after working with them, I had been filming for a few years and it killed a few deer on film, but I was still relatively new. I would not call myself an expert by no means as far as like production, quality editing, or producing, like Midwest whitetail quality, or really it was more like entry level stuff. And Andre had asked me if I was interested in filming with Whitetail Addictions, which I ended up signing on with them. And then I had an episode in their first season back with them where I ended up killing 2 deer on video, and one of them ended up being a 150-inch deer on Michigan Public. The other one was low 130s caliber a deer. And I learned a lot, as far as like where I needed to get better at, and loved the challenge of it. But in the same sense, I didn't like the direction that it was taking me away from why I got into it in the first place, like, and why I created From Dead to Dead, because it wasn't about gear, it wasn't about influencing, it wasn't about pushing a product. It was really about helping people and trying to let people know that it doesn't matter what hunting stand you want to use, or sticks you want to use, or boots or bow or whatever, that what it comes down to is, yes, can those things help aid you as far as quality, take lightweight stands, make it easier on us, um, you know being able to take stuff down and get into places that you couldn't, with other kinds of stands or equipment. But it's really about the knowledge and the tactics and being in the right place, regardless of what your stand is. That's what's killing the deer, and your hard work that goes into it. So, like for me, that I felt like I drifted away from that and was kind of chasing somebody else's dream, so to speak. Like, I got pretty involved with Lone Wolf Custom Gear, and I went to all the shows. I, was their stuff was being produced out of my garage in my backyard. I had probably, I don't know, maybe a couple $1 million of merchandise at one time in my garage, which was kind of unnerving. But we live in a good area, and it was protected. But at the same time, like, I realized that my true passion, which was being able to reach people and talk whitetails, was kind of getting taken away. And a lot of people might recognize me from Mobile Hunters United, which is a page that Cody DeQuisto, Connor Wakefield, and I actually came up with on a fishing trip in Michigan. And we approached Andre about it, had a 4-way conversation, and decided we're going to go with it. And it was supposed to be about uniting all mobile hunters because of a lot of the rifts that were going on, and a lot of the pages on social media are monitoring or censoring what people say, and sometimes that's a good thing, but but also when you're trying to push an agenda, um, you know, it's kind of hard to reach everybody in that kind of platform. So our goal was to really make it, whatever gear you use, it doesn't matter. Um, More of a we're in this together kind of thing. And there were other people in the company uh, who had other ideas for that and saw that as more of an advertisement platform for, not, I wouldn't just say just Lone Wolf Custom Gear, but like Whitetail Addictions as well, and 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 I was the admin on the page. And when everything just kind of went down, and I kind of made this realization, and one of the guys that runs Whitetail Addictions and I had a fallout. Um, it was time for me to go back to what I truly loved and wanted to do. And I talked to Andre and just told him, like, I was done being a influencer sponsored person, and I just wanted to go back to the basics, which was helping, you know, which is helping other people out. So a lot of people will recognize me off the Hunting Beast. A lot of people will recognize me off of Lone Wolf Custom Gear. A lot of people will recognize me from Mobile Hunters United. You know, most of the guys that are, the constants on there, etc. Um, and again, a lot of people followed me on our From Bed to Dead, which that was another thing too. Is like, I was on Facebook, but with all the drama that goes on Facebook and everything else, I just didn't see how that platform was being used effectively, and I ended up deleting my personal account and my From Bed to Dead account, and I just went to Instagram and YouTube. And I still got Messenger, and I still have a lot of people message me and ask me questions, and talk to me, but I wanted to get away from the drama and I guess this huge pull from so many people that pro staff and being an influencer is like the way in the industry, or the way to your claim to fame, when it's really not about the fame as much as it is being able to help other people. And uh, peer recognition is more important than selling your soul to sell a product to me. So that is a little bit of background into like myself and how I got into it, and maybe how some people would recognize me. Um, and again, I'm not Lee Lukoski, I'm not Andre DeQuisto, I'm not Dan Infalt. Um, I'm just a country boy from Michigan, who loves to hunt and loves talking whitetails, and has gotten my ass handed to me more than once by a mature buck, and been fortunate enough to also taste some success too. So.
Oh, one thing's for sure, you're a big buck killer. Your story's interesting to me, and hopefully other people, because generally I think when people get involved in that, they tend to want to move up the ranks, and I'm sure a lot of people get lost somewhere along the way. And it's interesting to me that you kind of went in the reverse. You kind of grasp what kind of was going on and what your personal goals were, and kind of grabbed it and said, no, this isn't for me. I don't
Well,
think you see
I
that very
did.
much.
I have to admit, like, I did temporarily lose, and I didn't want to admit that I lost myself, because like that was, I didn't feel that way. Um, I was looking at it like I was trying to help build something that I believed in, and then when, like, my eyes were open, so to speak, um, I realized how far away from the path I actually had strayed, from where I wanted to be. And I have to admit, like, I've got a great wife and a supporter, and and she saw it all too. She was right there with me, saw all the hours I was putting in, saw all the hard work and the dedication, and she just said, like, you're doing this for somebody else. You know what I mean? Like, and in a sense, like, to her, you're not being appreciated for what you're bringing to the table. And 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 in a sense, she was right. And I like I said, there's no hard feelings. It's not for me. And I think a lot of guys think that it is until they get into it and realize, in a sense, you're asked to sell your soul for some money off of product. You're asked to go do this, and no one's offering a contract, or with you to also protect you as well. Like, yeah, you'll sign non-disclosures, and you can't share innovations, etc., but, like, pro staff used to mean you didn't have to pay for your gear, in the advertisement aspect, and your following, and what you were doing for the company. That was repaid in appreciation by getting your gear. And oftentimes, a lot of times, like, people got paid for it too. And I'm not at all, like, unhappy because I didn't get paid, to run Mobile Hunters United, or I didn't get paid to, do the shows, etc. I got paid when I worked for the company. But it people lose themselves, and they'll sell themselves out for 15% off, 20% off, to be able to list that they're a pro staff or an ambassador for such and such company. But the truth is, you're just a piss ant to them. You're easily replaceable. There's 100 other guys that will jump and sell their soul. And the difference with me, and again, maybe some people might think this is arrogant or overconfident, but there's not another 100 me's out there, and there's not another 100 guys that would work as hard as I do, and has dedicated myself and my time away from my family for somebody else, trying to earn a living helping a company grow. And just like anybody else who's in their line of work, whether it's an engineer, a doctor, or you're a McDonald's worker, when you feel unappreciated, you lose the drive to want to give your all. And then on top of it, you lose yourself, and your own happiness and your joy, and what brings that to you. And in a sense, I lost that. And I was fortunate enough, with the events that happened, that I was able to get that back. And I don't regret it. I don't regret it one bit. At this point, like, I'm happy, a lot less stressed out. And I can get back to what it was I loved in the first place, was being able to help other people, and just talk whitetails, and then share my endeavors, in hopes that, even if it only helps a couple people or a handful of people, that was, my making a difference, but also doing it my way, where I'm not being influenced or being told what I have to do. I need to post this. I need to post that. You need to, we're going to push this item, or like, that part wasn't for me.
So I started Hunt the Wild a couple years ago. I started out to do the same thing. I just wanted to kind of help people out, let them, see what I'm doing, maybe offer tips and tricks on anything. Squirrel hunting, somebody wants to buy their own 21st 22, go out hunting, hunt deer. I don't know. I'm no big buck killer, but that's why I started this. I know that there's a lot of people that want to get involved in the hunting industry. So I want to touch on this a little bit too to hopefully help some people out who are listening. If somebody wants to get involved, what do you recommend to keep them? Maybe their goal is to be sponsored or pro staff or something, but if they're more on the lines of you and I, what do you recommend they do? Because it seems like mostly the only route is to go, with sponsorships and products and all that stuff. Where do they start? Do they just start an Instagram page? I mean,
Well, this is kind of a touchy subject because I feel like the market is flooded with a ton of people putting out content out there, and you have to be kind of leery of that because a lot of these guys, they're looking for people to follow them, except they don't have the knowledge, they don't have the experience, they don't have they want to be recognized as, I'm a big buck killer, but you don't have any big bucks to your name. People are going to come to you and ask you, well, what's your keys to success for early season? Well, you don't have any success in any season when on the platform that you're trying to attain. So, like, my biggest thing is that I would tell someone if they're experienced or non-experienced, is to start your own page and do it the way you want to do it. You'll never have any regrets if you do it the way you wanted to do it. Whether if that's chasing a sponsorship from somebody, whether that's just doing it without sponsors, but post the content and let your following be organic. And if what you're putting out is good content, it'll grow. Don't be afraid to look at it like it takes a couple years to get where you want to be. You're going to get better at being on in front of an audience. You're going to get better as a hunter, as a filmer, or whatever it might be. But give it your all. You know what I mean? Like, give it your all and let it be organic. Don't try to be somebody you're not or mold yourself into what somebody else used to be successful. Be one of a kind, and don't be afraid to be yourself. And if that works, then so be it. If it doesn't, then so be it. You know what I mean? Like, that's just the aspect, like, from my perspective, that's what a lot of people need to understand,
I think it's interesting. You'll see, at least I know, I'll run across an Instagram page or I don't know if you're on TikTok or not, or a Facebook page or
No, I'm not.
You'll see good content and you'll see like a guy that's killing big deer. He's doing like consistent stuff. The guy doesn't get like very many likes or anything. He doesn't have a very big following, but then you'll turn around and you'll see somebody. I don't want to mention any names or anything, but
right.
You'll see somebody that's posted up in all this high grade gear and they're looking flashy but you go to their page and that's all they have. They don't have they're like big buck killers, but you never see any you never see any of that. You never see any of like the realness,
content.
the hunt. All you see is the product pushing, but those people are always the ones with all the likes and all the follows. Why? Don't people come there to see the content, to see like how to do it? Or are people just so wrapped up in all that advertising bullshit?
They are, and that's just kind of like, that's part of like how it it goes, right? But in all honesty, again, if I had 10,000 followers and I was posting posts and I'm getting 1,000 likes on my post, which I don't pay attention to that, to be honest with you. But I was someone who had 500 followers and I was getting, 250 likes. You're engaging in more of percentage of your followers, and you know what I mean. So the people that are actually following you are following you, and so I I get that it's easy to get caught up in the likes and whatnot, but that's where you got to take your joys from the success stories from the people that you helped out, the messages from people telling you thank you for the content that you put out. It helped me so much. Or those people that extend their situation, like, hey, can you look over this map for me? Hey, can I call you? Hey, can I do this? And I believe that genuineness goes a long ways. And again, that organic following of a real following is so much more important than an image. You know what I mean? Like, we're known, us men and women in this world are known by our works. And there's a lot of people that fake it till they make it. Yeah, I mean, even the big names in the industry, again, we're not going to make names, but like, people look at them as, wow, they kill giants every year, but they don't also understand all of the potential things that they're doing, whether they're filming on, great tracts of land, outfit land, their own personal 1,000 acres or 2,000 managed in Iowa. And I'm not saying that if we didn't have the ability to own our own land and do it, we wouldn't do it. But I don't, there's like a false sense of like what makes you a good hunter or what makes you someone you should follow. When a lot of it is entertainment based, or they feel the pressure that they need to kill big deer on film, so they got to go pay for them, or, oh, I'll sponsor this for an advertiser such and such place so I can get a free hunt on here, etc., or whatever it might be. And again, I don't think that's 95% of the hunting world. I think 95% of the hunting world has to hunt what they have available to them. Knock on doors, public land. Their out-of-state trips are DIY out-of-state trips, those kind of things. Those people are looking for the answers to, and to be able to relate with real people who are really doing it and really being successful at it. And then, and gravitating towards the people that can put it into words and share it with them so they can understand it. And I'll be honest with you, I think the reason why that, even like your top, hunting YouTubers have, 400,000 followers, where you see a guy who's like a guitar player, teaches lesson, has 5.4 million. I think because of the way the hunting industry has went, it's turned a lot of people off. And because of the overflooding of the market in YouTube, etc., with your self-proclaimed, pros or guys that, are, you should follow, it's made it difficult and really turned a lot of people off to not being as engaged as they once were. And who do you trust? Or who's telling the truth, and or who's giving me really good advice that is going to translate into my hunting, or that I might be able to take a few things from and use. That's the hard part, and that's really where people have to sift through, take the time, I guess, if it matters to them. And I think listening to people, you can tell, because it'll start to match up with the things you saw in the woods. You'll be able to relate to it. You'll understand their ability to explain correctly what that is and the interpretation in it. or their side of their spin on it and how it works for them, and then be able to apply it and go, wow, this, maybe it didn't work to a flawless T, but I saw success there. I saw an improvement in this area. And I think those are the kind of people that people end up gravitating towards. They tell their buddies about, and it gains traction. It just takes time, you know?
I know I've been hunting since I was a young kid, but I know I used to follow a lot of the big names on, I don't know, TV and stuff. But within like the past couple of years, I really kind of seeked out individuals like Dan Infalt and the DeQuistos and guys like you, man, that are not super famous and all over TV, we'll say. And man, you just learn so much more. It seems like it when you watch that stuff on TV. It seems like all you see is really the shot and some products, but you don't ever learn anything from it. It makes it hard for guys that are trying to hunt.
It's kind of hard
Ultimately,
to it's kind of hard to relate to sitting over uh, a bean field in the wintertime in a redneck blind with 10 big bucks out in the field that they're not even interested in. That any, like those 95%, most guys would be absolutely thrilled to take, waiting on an absolute, giant to come out that they know of. And I'm not saying it's any easier to kill them or etc., but it's kind of hard to relate to that when, like, for a guy like me, I have no clue what that's like. I couldn't tell you at all what that's like to do. And really, to be honest with you, I don't really have any ambition to hunt that way either, because to me, that's that's a form of hunting, but that's just not my preference and how I like to and enjoy to hunt, you know, with. I love the chess match. I love the making moves, and you never know what's around the corner and what could lie next. Um, that's kind of more my style. And I'm not knocking it. I am. It might seem like I am, but just to me, I don't feel like most guys can really relate to that. They watch it for entertainment value because everybody loves to see a giant get killed. And those videos are well put together. They've got some of the best editors, and because of the sponsors and everything else, like, they have a lot more money to be able to do. But like, for guys like me, like, I either have to pay somebody to edit of quality, or which I'm in the process of learning it myself and trying to figure it all out. And like, that money is coming from me. I don't have a product that I'm trying to sell, or a company that I'm starting up, etc. As far as, like, that's producing a product for people to buy into. And that's what I think makes me relatable to a lot of other guys, is because the knowledge is free. To follow along in my journey doesn't cost a dime. Um, you know, I'm not, I'm trying to help other people. This is a true fact. My wife could back it up. Um, over the past 3 years, I've had thousands of people reach out to me, and I've never not answered one of them. When I had Facebook, on Messenger or Instagram, or people call me or message my, the page, I have took the time to answer every single person and give them the same respect that I would anybody else, regardless of their name or who they are or their skill level or what their goals are. It doesn't matter. I really did devote my time to trying to hunt, like, to try to help um, the general population and anyone that was looking to either, you know, whatever their hunting career was, or sustain success, or kill their first deer, or kill their biggest deer, or put the pieces together on a mature buck. It didn't matter. Um, but I just said I would always answer and respond to those that reached out to me, because you should take it as a very high honor that people think enough of you to ask your opinion, and are seeking the time to go out. And as men and women, sometimes it's not easy asking for help, or swallowing your pride and say, man, I'm stumped. I've been hunting for a lot of years. I think I'm a pretty decent hunter, but like I'm missing something here. What am I missing? And you really learn a lot about a person by giving them the time of day and treating them with the respect that they deserve, and being a public service person. You're not getting paid to do it, and that's perfectly fine by me. My old goal was that one day, with the YouTube channel, that if we ever went monetized and made money, it wasn't coming out of your pocket or my pocket or somebody else's. YouTube pays you for their ad time, and
Mm-hmm.
whatever money that generated, it's not. I'm not gonna ask for follows. That's one thing people tell you about me. I don't ask for follows. I don't have giveaways so I can get to 2,000 subscribers or 3,000 subscribers. Like, I'm not. I don't want to beg or seek that kind of attention. I want it to be organic, where somebody heard a podcast, somebody saw a video, somebody could relate to me, or was referenced by another hunter, because to me that person is likely to truly follow you and be engaged in what you're doing, more so than somebody who's looking to get a free hat on a giveaway or a sweatshirt, or or to be associated with what you're doing.
Before I respond to that, I'm getting a little bit of crackle from your end. I don't know if I know you're recording from your truck right
Yeah,
now.
yeah, we're building a house right now, so the camper is full with everybody, so it makes it kind of tough. So yeah, I'm in that parking lot. I'm not sure if it's. I mean, it could be. Is that better?
It's just kind of crackling every so often, maybe every 10 seconds, but it's just like a little white noise. I don't know. Maybe you had could have been like air conditioner on, maybe blowing
Yeah,
into it or something.
yeah, I had the air on slightly, but I turned it down, so maybe it'll straighten itself out or whatever. I apologize for those that are listening and having to deal with that. So I know it makes it unenjoyable.
So I think it's interesting that which I do the same thing. I reply to everybody. Sometimes it might take me a day or two, but I do reply to everybody that messages me. I think it's interesting that a guy like you that consistently kills big bucks on public land in different states, that people like me or people like average guys can message you and get a response, because guys like us, when we message big names in the industry, they're never going to see the message. You're never going to get any kind of response. So I think that's important, for people to learn. I mean, they've got to learn from somebody, right? So if they're not getting any response from guys that are doing it, how do they learn? So it's nice that you take the time, unpaid and everything, to respond and give people advice. I want to ask you one more question, then we'll kind of get into some deer hunting stuff. What's one thing that you would caution people like trying to get into the industry? I'm sure we probably covered a little bit of it, but what's the one main point you would tell somebody when they said, "Hey, Jason, I want to get involved in the hunting outdoor industry. What do I do?" You know, what would you say?
Well, if we're talking like from a caution standpoint, um, do your research on the company, and not just the company, but those who run the company. How is that company ran? What are their goals? How's their customer service? How do they treat their pro staff? Because you can reach out to other pro staff and ask them, like, hey, how's the engagement? Um, you know, Maybe devote your time, and if you do get lucky enough to be with somebody, or fortunate enough to get chosen, volunteer for a show, work with them, see how their company works, see how they treat their not just their customers, but also the people that work for them. Figure out what's being asked of you, and if it's really realistic that you could accommodate those things that they're asking of you. Um, because to be honest with you, and this isn't This to me isn't just it's a every other company or every once in a while company. The industry is very cutthroat. And again, like I said, there's 1,000 of you, and they know it, who will work for that 15% discount to be associated, to have their name linked to somebody else, um, to repost pictures and talk good about a product. And even if they don't believe in the product, even if they've never used it, to be able to say, hey, you know, like I've used this certain scent and, it works. Well, where's the proof? You know what I mean? Like, and I'm not just saying that it doesn't, but I'm saying, like, you know, know know something about the product that you're aiming towards. And I think most people, when in the beginning stages, they try to go for the products and that they use, that they are familiar with. But a lot of times what happens is because you're just a nobody, you have to get in your foot in the door, and a lot of the up and coming products that maybe not a lot of people have heard of are going to be your opportunities. And that makes it difficult because they haven't been in the game very long. Um, they're relatively new. You don't really know a whole lot about them. And like, there are a lot of great people to work with in the industry. I've been fortunate to meet a lot of wonderful people that I'm still friends with to this day and talk to on a regular basis. But again, I've also met a lot of people that I really don't care if I ever talk to again. Like, it just, I've saw them and the way they act, the way they run the company, the way they talk to their people, the way that, like, what's expected of you, etc., compared to what they're willing to give you in return. And I just, there are some people that it works for. Yeah, but if you're trying to do something along the lines of what we're doing, you're doing, I'm doing, a lot of other people are doing, um, my advice would be to stay away from the sponsorship thing, um, and see where you can get your company to go to with your own hard work, with your own success, using whatever you want so you don't have to answer to somebody. And being, you don't have to edit this out. You don't have to advertise this or that. I think a lot of people get turned off by that whole, like I said, and you mentioned this too, when it's a walking billboard, your content, when, you know, a certain, brand is all over something to the point that's like, okay, we get it. You know what I mean?
Mm-hmm.
Like,
Yeah.
it, it really is, it's being pushed down your throat. And I know that tactic has been successful from an advertisement standpoint. But if you hear a lot of people talk, especially guys like us, nobody wants to see that anymore. They're tired of it. You know what I mean? They're tired of the battles between who is the best and who is this, and, oh, well, I'm not a this guy brand user, or you're not a this, well, you don't know how to hunt, or you don't use this kind of stand or saddle, or et cetera, et cetera. And it's just it's a constant beef back and forth. Like, who gives a shit? Use what you want to use what works for you. And those guys that want to shame or bash or do whatever, that, it's one thing to respectfully disagree with somebody's opinion, but those guys that are trolling, asking like, well, why do you use this brand, etc., they know what they're doing, and they'll try to hide behind the whole thing, like, well, I just wanted to know, like, where he was coming from. Yeah, but then your next line, once he says it, is only to rebuttal him and then try to bash the company and go down. Like, no, it's not. And there's people, that's their job to do and expected for companies to do, is purposely bash their products, purposely go on there. That's like, that's why I said it's not for me. You know what I mean? Like, I don't care what company comes up and sells a certain stand or stick or camera arm or bow or whatever. like, more power to them. I would like to see all entrepreneurs be successful when they're good people and run a good, legitimate product with good customer service, etc. Like, we as consumers, we profit from that by having many options to choose from, and not everybody's the same. So what works for you might not work for me, and it's nice to be able to have those options. Why people got to feel like there's only one option or what they use is the best? And again, this isn't some newfound thing. It's the Chevy, Ford, Chrysler, whatever, same syndrome. But to be honest with you, when you look at it, that's not what makes you successful. Your drive, your passion, your hard work, your dedication, you're honing your craft, you're learning and the knowledge to be able to put yourself in the position to be there when that animal is there and successful, sustained success. That has nothing to do with the products that you're using. So,
So
and I know guys will say, well, I mean, it keeps you warmer in the woods, you'll stay longer. Like, we'll figure it out. You know what I mean? We will. If we have to suffer, we will. And guys will naturally gravitate. If you're a cold, a late season hunter, guys upgrade their stuff naturally so they don't freeze, and they'll ask questions. Hey, what works and what this, and then that happens like on an organic level, and you get good people to give good advice. Um, you know, without trying to push something down your throat. And there's a lot of good people out there that will do that. Say, hey, man, I've used this, and this. These were great. And that was just my experience in them. And people have a lot of different options to choose from. And whatever option they choose from is obviously probably going to be better than what they were using in the first place. So, like, they'll naturally start to gravitate towards getting gear that it optimizes their hunting style. So, I get how gear can help you stay longer in the woods or make it more enjoyable or comfortable or easier. But again, that tree stand don't put you in the right position. That it don't pick the spot you should go to. That takes your brain and your knowledge and your ability to read sign and deer behavior and time spent in the woods. And I really feel like a lot of people are overlooking that aspect, and that's kind of where we're blinded at right now.
well, I kind of want to jump into some deer hunting stuff now. Thought it was important to touch on that stuff because I know there's a lot of people interested in it, and people need to know kind of the truth. Like, what should you caution against if people don't know what they're getting into? It's nice to hear from somebody that's been through it. So you're a big buck killer. I've seen some pictures of your Pope and Young bucks. Do you remember the moment that you decided you wanted to start shooting these mature bucks? Was it like a light switch? I mean, you were killing probably forkhorns and stuff at one point, right? Spikes.
Yeah,
When was the moment?
So yeah, I have a basket at home that's like a box that's like a reminder of all the like forkhorns and little sixes and 3 points, whatever legal buck came through. And I had a blast doing that, and I had to learn to be a killer first. But I do remember the exact moment that it was. I have always been a mobile hunter. Outside of my early Michigan bait pile fixed stand days, um, we I I had a lone wolf assault and the full length sticks, and that was my system. Like, when I didn't see anybody using one around me for a long time, and that was just how I hunted. And people say, you take that down every time you go out and go there, and I was like, yeah, I mean, but like, failure was my greatest teacher. But um every year you want to kill a big buck, right? Like, that's your goal. Like, I'm going to kill a big one this year, like, and you say it. But realistically, my goals were like, okay, I want to kill 2 8 points this year. You're allowed 2 tags in Michigan. And like, I was like, I want to kill 2 8s this year. I didn't care how big they were. And I did that for a few seasons. And then it was like, okay, I want to kill my best buck this year. And I remember during like this process, I never really had age class or a specific horn size, like, like score in mind. But I went into an area and I was looking for a big buck, and a year and a half old 8 came out, and it was probably 15-inch inside spread. It had a split G1, probably the very buck you should pass because it had the genetics to be an absolute hammer. And I was videoing it with my phone, and then I was like, oh shit, I probably should shoot this thing. And I grabbed my bow, and it was like 15 yards away. I, double lunged him. He ran over like 80 yards and fell over and died. And I hung my bow up, and I was like, that was cool. And it like hit me when I was sitting there. I never got the shakes like I used to when I was killing whatever deer, and whether it was a doe or whatever, like just that after moment. I've never got them beforehand, but I always got it right after the shot. And like I watched the deer, everything's in slow motion, and it disappears, and all of a sudden, boom, it hits you, and like you're flooded with that adrenaline and that emotion and the excitement. And it never hit me. And I was sitting in my tree stand, and I was like, it's time for a change. Like I've reached this point where I'm not challenging myself anymore. My goals I've set are so low that I can accomplish them. And even though I was a successful hunter, like especially here in Michigan, and we get a lot of guys talk about how hard it is here to hunt. It is hard here to hunt. It's not the hardest state, and I will never make the claims of that. But it is a difficult state. It's very pressured. But I we had a pretty big hunting party, and my dad and I were the only guys that were filling our tags every single season on bucks, and we were killing the bigger bucks out of all the guys, even though they were basket 8s or 7-point or 5-point. The other guys, for the most part, like it just wasn't happening. So like we were already setting a precedent as far as like being killers, and that's what we were known for. But like my own personal goal was like I wanted to kill a big buck. And my idea of a big buck had nothing to do with score. It was just a certain frame. You just knew it when you saw it. And I remember telling my dad that I said, I'm going to scout harder this year. We were already mobile. We'd seen a lot of nice deer, but just could never seem to close the gap on them. And I said, I'm going to up my game. I'm going to read everything I can read. I'm going to research everything I can research. I mean, I'm going to pick brains of guys that I think that are really good at hunting or have success. Find out what the keys are, not just to one guy, but multiple. Maybe I'll be able to put like something together that correlates, 5 guys all have the same quality. Maybe that's what I'm lacking. And I wanted to refine my setups. I wanted to understand wind better. I wanted to understand bedding better, be able to understand all the food sources in the area. And I really dove into it like head first, super passionate about it. Like, the drive was there, the motivation was there. And at the time, my dad was like, you're going to eat a lot of tags, man. This is Michigan. Now, granted, I'm being honest with you, outside of somebody on private land, I had never seen a guy in a parking lot on public land pull even 100-inch deer out of any neck of woods, gun season, whatever. I just never saw it here. I mean, it's just like I saw 4 points and 6 points, and you'd see the occasional decent, 8, maybe just shy of 100 inches, but you never saw that like a mature buck, like what you would think. Like it wasn't commonplace. And so I knew I was setting a goal that was in a sense almost unattainable compared to what everybody would tell you. And that first year, it took me till November 7th, and I shot 132-inch 12-point. I actually shot it on the ground at 18 yards. It maybe ran 50 or 60 yards, stove right up and died, where I could see it. And at the time, my dad wasn't far from me. He actually heard the shot and then saw the deer running and then fall down. And he came running down where I was, and I was standing, like in the open, and I just like had my bow in the air, and I was like, dude, can you believe that? Like, did you see that? And he's like running down excited. And when we went over to the deer, man, we didn't let it lay for 5. I mean, it was dead. we went over to the deer, and we both thought 100% that that deer was 160 inches. And we'd never had one scored. We'd never saw a Pope and Young on the ground, nothing like that whatsoever. And so when we had it scored, I remember the disappointment when I found out, like, wow, that's 132. Like, and these guys are killing 170-inch deer, 150-inch deer, like that you see on the TV or whatever, like, and even other, other guys. And I was like that's an absolute, like, this is a buck of a lifetime. And I remember feeling like I accomplished a lifetime goal. And I remember I didn't hunt for like 3 days afterwards because I felt like, where do I go from here? Like, I'm never going to kill a buck this big ever again. Like, this is like a once in a lifetime thing. And everybody even said, like, it's a buck of a lifetime. I heard it. I had people that were pulling over on the side of the road trying to get me to stop, stopping at gas stations, like taking pictures of my deer. Like I said, here, it's a huge deal to see a buck that big. Like, it's just, and it's coming more commonplace now, because more guys are into the quality deer management aspect of it and passing and being more specific. But still, it's still, when you see a buck of that caliber, it's not commonplace like Iowa or Kansas, where you see a 130 incher and they're like, why'd you shoot that? Kind of thing. It's a big deal here. And that was like, that was my first moment to it. But then after a few days, I was like, you know what? Like, maybe I don't have to beat that, but I want to see if I can duplicate it. So the next year I put in the hard work. I did everything else the same thing. And I ended up shooting 2 bucks. Shot one that scored 127. And the very next night, I shot a 140-inch 10-point. So I beat the buck that I shot, and I actually shot 2 Pope and Youngs in the same year, back-to-back days. And after that, you couldn't convince me that it couldn't be done anymore. Like, you just couldn't. And even my dad, who was like the first one, like, yep, you got lucky. And then the second one, man, that's a good, and then all of a sudden the third one, it was like, okay, what are you doing? You know what I mean? That was like, he was my partner, but we hunt, now we hunt very, very similar. But before, we scouted similar. We had the understanding of the deer. He just wasn't as aggressive as what I was, and was more like the sit back approach. And I think that has a lot to do with the time frame in which he started hunting, and like that whole mindset of you can't go in and blow them out kind of thing. And it's like, well, sometimes you can get away with a lot more than you think, but if you got to have all the factors in your favor, the wind, how you're walking in, knowing where they're bedding at, where they prefer to, understanding that bedding area, their travel routes, etc., where they're going, the food sources, where pressure's coming from, all the different variables that you have to be able to compute on the fly and game plan for. That's like, that was it. And then after that, I went on a stretch where, like, in Michigan, we have this thing called CBM. So anything over 100 inches makes Michigan record. And I went on a stretch for like 3 or 4 years where I was killing, like 105 to 120 inch bucks, but killing 2 every year. And then I got to this point where I didn't want to kill that caliber animal anymore. And it wasn't about a specific score as much as it was going after a specific deer. I wanted to start targeting specific animals that I either found in season and there was something about them I really wanted, or I knew about them from scouting, glassing, whatever, and they were the oldest buck. But I wanted to the challenge was to go after the best caliber deer that I could, not necessarily the score, but like if it was a big, mainframe 7 with mass busted up, but he was like the big boy in the block, I wanted to outsmart that deer and I wanted to kill him. And so I started targeting specific deer. And again, like I said, the same principles that I was using, with the scouting and understanding the lay of the land and the bedding areas and the food sources and the wind, how to go in an area, how to come out of an area, and then started adding to that, like, the time frame of when these deer were using or moving in daylight. And I wasn't running cameras. I was just doing this off of like my own scouting, glassing, and then in season hunting / scouting. You know, we my dad and I laugh because we say we created this word. We call it skunting, where you're scout hunting. You're scouting for the place to hunt. You know what I mean? And so like that was what I started doing, and then I started killing specific deer. We really never got into naming deer specifically, but we just, we knew like, okay, that's that 10 point where, or that, that 9 point, or that buck we saw, we knew what we were talking about, or we'd name a specific hunting place, like a certain area. Um, like for instance, we got a place that we call a Jiggly Buck spot because my son was youth hunting, and this very mature buck wasn't a real big rack deer, maybe 120, 130 came out, and his body was jiggling. So we all laughed and said, okay, that's the Jiggly Buck spot. So like we that's kind of how we did things. And then and I started killing specific deer. And then, that's still where I'm at right now is going after the best caliber animal I know how to find. And that, listen, I might have my eyes set on you know, a specific 8 point, and then I hunt 4 or 5 days after them, and all of a sudden find a 10 point that really, now I'm like, okay, I want the 8 or the 10, and I'll hunt until, like I said, we get 2 tags here. So if one of those bucks comes by me, like, I'm going to shoot him. And yeah, is there sometimes, a surprise buck shows up that maybe you didn't know about, and, that fits your criteria? Of course, that happens, but it's become less frequent that started to happen, and it's more of a surprise factor, you know what I mean, than what it is. And then, so, you know, and it's been, 20 years, and, you know, I've been fortunate enough in that 20 years to knock one down, at least one down every year, a lot of years too. And then, so that got me traveling out of state, because one of my goals was like, I want to be able to kill a buck like that in every state I hunt for the challenge of my own self. Like, there's no recognition, and I don't get no award or something like that. It's just my own thing I wanted to do. And in the beginning years when I started hunting out of state, I think I had my goal set a little too high. Like I was like, I'm going for a 160 or bust. Um, and really like on public land outside of maybe like Kansas, Iowa, someplace like that, a mature buck is still a trophy. Like, and so I had to learn that, granted, last year in Indiana, again, I didn't know that area at all. I never hunted there whatsoever. Just went down. A buddy of mine that hunts with from Bed to Dead, actually, had prior knowledge in this area, this whole area, and wanted me to come down, and he had spots picked out, etc. And I went down and kind of looked at his spots, and it wasn't my style, like how I would hunt. And so I went back to the camper and started looking on the maps and picked like 3 or 4 spots out. And the next morning I slept in, drove around, scouted where all the people were in the parking lots, and then looked at the spots that I wanted to look at. And 3 of the 4 spots I looked at were busts. It didn't look like what I wanted it to look like or what I thought it looked like on the map. But then the one spot had everything I was hoping for. And when I got there, it was absolutely just obliterated with sign. 5 huge scrapes the size of a truck hood, a horizontal rub that went from my neck down to my knee, several big, huge rubs, fresh tracks, droppings. Like I knew, I could smell the scrapes even downwind. So like I knew, I called my wife and said, either tonight or tomorrow I'll be tagged out. She's like, how do you know? I said, just telling you. And I got set up at 1 o'clock. At 2:28, I called my wife and said, he's dead. And she's like, really? And I didn't know how big the deer was, honest to God. Like I videoed him, got great footage, and that episode will be coming out pretty quick. A friend of mine, Sam, from Chase Nation, great guy. He's going to be editing the film for me to get it out there. We just been so busy with the new build, the house, and everything going on in our life, but it's coming. And it's really, really informative. Like I said, I show why I set my stand, where I set my stand. I was too many sticks high, the cover, the sign, what my train of thought was, how I came in, everything that happened. And then, it played out pretty much exactly like I said it was going to play out, and I ended up shooting him at 7 yards. So and then of course I thought he was a mid 40s caliber deer when I first saw him. And then when you walk up to him, afterwards, he just kept getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And I've not officially scored him, and I'm not going to. I haven't officially scored a buck in probably over 10 years. Just doesn't matter to me, but he'll go Boone.
So you've got to gain this reputation, I'm sure, around your hometown to be like the guy doing it. I mean, if guys in Michigan, like you said, they're not used to seeing those kind of deer killed. Do you ever feel, and you're on social media now with, the internet and everything, do you ever feel like pressure, like you need to I'm sure you feel pressure in your own goals, like you need to kill a buck, a nice buck this year, but do you ever feel like you're pressured by outside influence?
See, one thing about me is I'm a really competitive person naturally. So if I'm playing a basketball game with my son and playing pig, I want to win. I'm not going to let you win. That's just how I am. Now, if you beat me fair and square. I can accept defeat, and I'm a gracious loser. But I'm the kind of person that will go out and shoot jump shots afterwards, because the next time we play each other, you're going to get a better version of me. So as far as the pressure wise goes, I put that pressure on myself every season to be successful. So even when I started filming, and you would think Whitetail Addictions, a sponsored, Lone Wolf Custom Gears or sponsorship or whatever, they've had a show before, you would think going into that there's this huge pressure packed thing to be successful. But that's what I do to myself every year, because that's my measuring stick. Every year my goal is to kill a big buck, at least one. And I'm disappointed in myself if I can't get the job done,
Yeah.
and so that pressure, it's not pressure to me. It's my expectation. And I think that's a lot of people do put the pressure on them, because maybe they're not at that level, or they're jumping into something, skipping a bunch of different steps and going right to the whole, I'm going to be a big buck killer. When a guy like me, I learned how to kill deer, period. I learned how to draw on them, how to, not get busted, by all my failures, but then also by killing all the deer that I did. It was just whatever legal was to kill. And then I gravitated naturally. I took the steps. It was like a stepping stone thing to get to where I was. And I feel like I did that pretty quick, because I'm still relatively young. I mean, I'll be 40 years old this year. So I hopefully have several years left in me to be able to do it like this. But I let my own expectations and goals lead me, not someone else's. So for me, if I shot a 115-inch deer and I was pumped to do it, I don't care who you are, you weren't going to make me feel bad about the deer I shot. That was my trophy. I worked hard for that deer. It was the best deer I could find. And regardless of what state you hunted in or what you had to say, you weren't going to change my mind. So, for me, do I know people expect to see, and they comment on my page all the time and stuff like that, oh man, can't wait to see the buck you killed this year. But I don't feel that as pressure, because that's just my expectation. When you put yourself in the public's eye, number one, you're going to get scrutiny for how you do things and your success. People are always going to think you're cheating somehow, or you're doing something wrong, etc. But then for the people that do respect you, etc., they come to believe that, you're going to get it done. And they're expecting, which is a cool thing. You should be happy with that. you get to surprise them with the caliber animal that you shoot every single year. And regardless of what people think or are expecting, that does not go in my decision making whether I shoot a buck or not. The
So
trophy is in the eye of the beholder, you know.
that's going to lead me into my next question, because I know a lot of guys are not big buck killers. You know, guys are shooting whatever they want to shoot. How do guys deal, or girls deal with buck shaming? I mean,
It's yeah, I mean, honestly, it's horseshit. Like, it's one thing to me, like when you're a part of your own group and you know what I mean, like you guys are all friends or whatever, and you give each other shit over something, you know what I mean?
yeah,
One of your buddies like misjudges a deer because it happens sometimes. You know what I mean? You thought he was a little bigger than he was, or it was low light conditions, or you know whatever it might have been. Got an itchy trigger finger, so you give each other shit. That
yeah,
that's that's a different, like, sure, is it still shaming? Yes, but it's in a joking, loving manner. Comes from a good place. But the
yeah,
shit that we're talking about, like online, where guys are, you know, like, why I wouldn't have shot that deer, blah blah blah. Well, it's not your tag. You didn't pay the money for it. You don't know this guy's situation and how often he can hunt, or you know maybe he's hungry and really needed the meat. Like, you know, who knows what the situations are? But you should never judge somebody based upon just what in the hell ever happened to just being happy for somebody for their right and legal aspect to do and hunt how they want to hunt. You know, it was like that with crossbows when they first come out. Everybody was all like, "Oh, you know, they're not real hunters," and blah blah. Well, now, you know, as down the road as we hit, like, no one gives a shit. You know, oh well, you're using inline muzzle loaders and they're not like a regular flintlock muzzle loader. Down the road, nobody gives a shit. You know, it's, and the point is like, why rain on somebody's parade of what they decided they want to shoot or what they're happy with shooting and making them feel like less of a person or less of a hunter? We all start somewhere. And not only that, but some guys aren't into trophy hunting or mature buck hunting. They're meat hunters. You know, and I know there's an argument for that, like, well, if you're a meat hunter, shoot a doe, let the buck, what, you know, whatever. But still, if it's his legal right to take the deer that he takes, you know, as much as it might not be up your alley or what you want, what personal gain is there to cause? You're not educating the guy. You're not going to make him think, oh man, why should I have done that? You're only going to damage the hunting community more and push everybody apart. And instead, you should just be like, hey man, congratulations, good job. Be happy for your fellow man on their journey, and instead of, you know, blasting them for the caliber deer they decided to shoot. Like that, to me. And again, your stand up guys, or your guys that are usually your successful year in year out, it's not those kind of guys that are doing it. It's your internet warriors, your wannabe, you know, so-called experts, your guys that troll everybody, or they're on social media 24/7, comment on every little thing that takes place, you know, because they think it makes them look cool, or they feel like it's their business to educate somebody. But you're not really educating them. You're just educating us all on what kind of an asshole you are.
and I think it's important. It's really none of their business that deer you're shooting. If it doesn't, you know, it's not their tag and it's not their property. It's no concern to them. I I can't count the number of times I'm part of a group for Indiana. It's Bucks of Indiana. Just they post all deer that people send in. Can't count the number of times that people will take like I don't know, a 10-year-old kid and bash him for shooting a fork horn. It's like, God, man, you know, it could have been the kid's first time out. I'm sure he's pumped to do that. Grown men. I mean, it's insane.
That's a society issue, brother.
What
Something completely we could go on and on with, you know, especially with how our society is now. That's a society thing, and the age of entitlement we live in.
So let's jump into some public land strategies. I feel like you've got it. I feel like you've got it figured out. So I kind of want to pick your brain a little bit. So, like when you're looking for a new piece of ground to hunt, I don't know, you're on Onyx or Google Earth or whatever. What are you looking for? Like, are you just looking for the largest track? Are you looking for something that's close to your house? Are you looking for specific terrain features, a combination of all of those? I mean, how do you know what to pick and what to say I'm not going there?
Well, number one, like for my own home state, uh, when it's not too far drive, or even sometimes, some out of state places, I'm gonna go and drive there and walk it over and look, because I can't really write an area off on any of those aspects until I know that there's not mature bucks that are there, or bucks of the caliber that I'm looking for. So the most important aspect of finding a place to hunt or a new place is, number one, does it have the caliber deer that you want to kill, living on it, traveling through it, or frequenting it during the season? If the answer is no, then I move on. Or if I feel like that the density, or maybe the number of them that are there, is very, very low. When I say low, like maybe I've scouted 10,000 acres and I only thought I saw maybe one or two decent spots, I'll go to other pieces and then base my season on the best pieces and sign that I can find, with the best chances of success. I mean, think of it this way. Would you rather chase one buck all year or five big bucks all year? I mean, you know what I mean? Like your odds of success are going to go up if you have more quality caliber deer to chase. And again, sometimes I have multiple deer that I would be happy shooting, and sometimes I have one or two. It just depends on the season and the year. And and I also, like, again, I think it's huge to keep an eye on your up and comers. If you got a lot of 2.5-year-old 75 to 100-inch deer roaming around your area, odds are, next year you're going to have quite a few bucks that might fit your criteria, or vice versa, whatever you want to look at. So I mean, I look at all those factors. I look at pressure. Number two is, how many people are hunting this piece. Is the access super easy, where there's cutouts and trails all through it, so anybody can go anywhere, even if it's 1 mile in, it's not much effort. So that's another big aspect of it. The other aspect of it is bedding and food. You got to have food and bedding on the property for a deer to live there. So if and you're going to need good bedding, and you're going to need quality food sources. So I mean, they all play into one another. Um, but those are the most important pieces, if you ask me.
So once you get a piece of ground picked out and you're like gonna go put boots on the ground, let's say that it's maybe the first week of season. I'm sure that you've probably scouted it prior if it's around you, but let's just say you pick a piece that's out of state, you've never been there. You show up and it's like the first week. Where do you know where to begin? I mean, if you're hunting a tract that's thousands and thousands of acres, like, where do you start?
Well, one of the biggest things is most everybody has like Onyx or some sort of mapping app, or on their phone now, or computer, and there's no excuse to not be able to pick locations that you feel might be pretty good. Again, knowing where all the parking lots are, etc. And then forego that first morning, sleep in, get up at 8:39, make a coffee, drive around all those parking lots and see how many cars are in the parking lots. no, okay, there's 6 cars in this parking lot, but this one spot right here I was looking at, there ain't none. And it doesn't look like anybody's been there in a while. Maybe it's an overlooked piece. And then get out and put boots on the ground and see if the sign matches what you thought originally off your, scouting of your map. That means walking those transition lines, you know, looking at potential bedding, sometimes it could be standout bottlenecks if you're going during the rut. And sometimes it could be an overlooked bottleneck or, just terrain features why they go, whether it be a rise or ridges or creeks, stuff like that. And then, put the boots on the ground and spend their first day or two or however long, if you got a week trip, why waste your time hunting adequate or maybe not what you're willing to sign when you could be spending that putting boots on the ground, pounding until you find what is where you need to be, and then focusing your efforts on those areas for the remainder of your hunt. You will be way more successful if you do that. And like I posted videos, last year, like in Indiana, I drove around not just that area, but I wanted to see the whole square mile and the miles around it to see what was in the area. Like, was there, food sources, private pressure, shit like that. Like that's what I actually did. That was a major aspect of what I was doing. And I feel like that's a huge key in being successful because of the fact that, like, all that outside pressure, all those influence deer movement and potential bedding and stuff like that. So, like, the more variables that you can answer with logical or realistic answers, the better chances of success you're going to have when you can apply it to your hunting situations or your hunting strategy.
So sometimes you think it's good to burn a day then and scout. Maybe burn's not the right word, but
now, I
use
would
the
burn
first
a day, then go in the morning and stumble around somewhere and just sit in a stand and have no clue really what you're looking at as it gets daylight and hope to get lucky. Because that's, you know what I mean? Oh, well, I found, and I'm not saying you can't do that. If you're really good at map reading or you already know the area has good bucks in it from, previous years hunting, etc. Sure, you might be able to pick a spot out and go in there and on your way in kind of read the sign, play the wind, hunt, and be successful. But to me, I got to know as much as I possibly can about an area before I feel confident that I'm in the best position possible with doing the least amount of damage during that hunt. So that's just how I go about it. And it's worked out well for me.
It's easy, I think, because I know it still happens to me. It's easy to get caught up in just going in and sitting and hoping and sitting and hoping, sitting and hoping. But in reality, if you'd go in and burn a day, you'd probably learn a lot more burning one day than you would in 25 sits of going to the same place and doing the same thing. I mean, that's kind of insane if you think about it. I mean,
now, that is the very definition of insanity. But I mean, that's the difference between somebody learning or being stuck in their ways to somebody who's had success, understands kind of what it takes, what they're looking for. I'm not willing to burn 25 days in an area and never have seen a mature buck. Like, I'm not gonna be sitting in that area anymore. Like, that's not adequate for me. You know what I mean? Like, there's got to be something there keeping me there.
mm-hmm.
And if you're reading and interpreting the sign right, you should be having encounters at some point.
I think a lot of guys get caught up and they went out and they hung a stand, drug a big ladder stand with their buddy, or a double stand with their buddy a mile and a half back, and now they're like, we got this stand back here, we got to keep sitting it, and
yeah, they're invested.
Yeah. when you're going on these pieces of public and you're maybe burning a day or you're scouting your way in, what are you looking for specifically? I mean, I know you're looking for sign, you're probably looking for rubs. What if you can
you're looking for, when you say sign, you want specifics, because that's that's like a terminology that a lot of guys use, and you can't tell anymore whether somebody is actually knows what the hell they're talking about or they don't when they say, well, find the sign. Well, what exactly does that mean? Well, what that means to me is fresh tracks, droppings, rubs, runs, scrapes, sightings, uh, sign that a deer leaves that lets you know that it's using or living in that area. Those are what the key factors of what you're looking for are. 100%. How else would you know it? Because it's impossible for a deer to not leave any of those things in an area if it lives there. It's just impossible. It can't float. It's got to shit. It's got to eat. If it's a buck, it's going to rub. You could tell by the track size. It's not 100% a foolproof thing, but for the most part, it's a pretty good indicator of a good caliber deer. Rub heights and being able to differentiate like how high a rub is on what kind of a tree, what if there's tines dug in it, those kind of things can give you a pretty good indication on the caliber deer you're chasing. Little bucks don't rub on big trees or leave big rubs, but big bucks will rub on little trees. You know what I mean? So you got to have an understanding of those things. Aggressive, branches snapped over shows dominance. There's just certain things that you should be looking for.
So out of tracks and scrapes and rubs and poop and all that, if you had to pick one to set up on, what would it be?
Tracks. 100%.
Tracks.
100%, because you know how fresh they are. If you could tell how fresh. Now again, different times of the year, different reason. You know what I mean? Different things a great scrape in a secluded area or a scrape line, can be just a matter of time before the buck comes there. A rub line can lead you to a bedding area or a travel corridor that a buck is using. Again, can be just a matter of time, but you have to hit those with the perfect timing. But tracks don't lie. They tell you a deer's been in the area within 24 hours, or it's old. It's been a while before he's been in there. Same thing with poop. You could tell the difference between fresh poop and dried up old poop. Those give you relevancy on a time frame far greater than a scrape or a rub would, outside of of one that's literally just freshened up. You know what I mean? But if it's a couple days old, even some of the best guys have a hard time interpreting how long it's been since the deer's been using it, or if they're using it every day, or et cetera, et cetera. To me, tracks are such a wonderful indication because they tell you what direction a deer's going, where they've been, where they're headed to, how long has it been since they've been there, how often have they been there, those kind of things. So, that to me, those have been more important to my success over the last few years, than any other factor to me. Now, they all have a place, don't get me wrong, and they do. But, again, you can't put yourself in a box and say, okay, well, if I was only going to do one thing, this is what I would do. They all work hand in hand with each other. But to me, that's probably the most important factor in my honest opinion and in my endeavors that I feel has worked for me. And again, not everybody interprets everything at the same level, or even that their minds work the same way. So, you know, other guys might have better success with finding scrapes and rubs and interpret those, and that's just their bread and butter. But for me, it's 100% tracks.
So on food sources, I know I've fought with this, and I'm sure thousands of other people have. When deer start to transition off the like the beans and all that stuff, and you go into the timber and you're trying to find the acorns and everything. Let's say you have tons and tons and tons of acorns. How do you know where to be? I guess you're basing that off tracks and scrapes and rubs. Like if there's
Well,
tons of
tracks,
acorns,
tracks and deer shit. If they're there and spending time there, you're gonna have a lot of deer shit on the ground. You know what I mean? And you're gonna
yeah.
have a lot of tracks on the ground. But another thing too is once season comes, them deer have already had pressure put on them on public land because people have been out hanging their stands, late scouting, trying to get their last little bit, whether you got ewe seasons, you got doe seasons, whatever it might be. Them deer are already starting to get pressured, so that's where your spring scouting and winter scouting starts to come in because you're knowledgeable about the bedding areas that are existing around your area, and then it's about putting your stand on your back and trying to find those isolated secure oak acorns that are dropping, and then match that up with the sign like rubs, scrapes, tracks, scat, and then being able to determine the direction, like where he's bedded and he's traveling here, and then how to come in the area, how to exit out the area, how to play the wind like you want it to be, and then that's when all the factors kind of to key in. But
How far off the
it's
food sources do you feel like you need to be? I mean, are you setting up in the tree that's dropping the acorns, or I guess it's all dependent on where the trail's
how
coming
far,
from, and
yeah, how far away is the bedding?
yeah,
You know what I mean? Like
I
I've
feel
seen
like
deer, and I've got multiple spots where deer, are traveling over a mile away to get to food sources.
I feel like a lot of people, including me, see acorns or whatever, and you're like, oh, I'm putting a stand in this tree, and it's like that's
And
probably not always the best
sometimes
case.
that can work out, but you got to have the factors like the bedding's got to be relatively close, and the buck's got to be living in that bedding relatively close. The pressure had to have been low in the area to make it feel comfortable to be there. Like, I mean, there's a lot of factors that have to go your way. And like I said, like a lot of the bedding areas I hunt, those deer have no issue getting up and traveling a mile. We might look at it and go like, wow, that's a mile away, but that's 20 minutes for a deer to get to. Like, that's not that far. So they have no issue, doing that, you know what I mean, to get to where they're at. But, to answer that, I'm going to be wherever the daylight movement patterns are to that deer once I've located them and I've found them. Some deer don't travel very far from bedding, outside of their bedding before it gets dark. And there's other deer, characteristic lies their personalities where, they'll travel, several hundred yards in daylight. I mean, it just, depends. Every deer has a different characteristics or personality, or like, we got some deer that are super, super wary. And then you got other deer that like, man, I'm starving, I'm going to get my ass there. And they don't waste no time and they just like get moving. Like, you know what I mean? And they're just walking steady, and then they're not as cautious, where you got other deer that he might travel 20 minutes once he stands up out of his bed, and 20 minutes, you know what I mean, before he finally makes a decision to start moving. So you have to be closer to him than you would, the other deer's characteristics is more, he's more of a daylight walker. So like that has a lot to do with reading the characteristics of the deer that you're hunting.
Hey, everybody. I apologize for having to cut the episode short. Time got away from Jason and I, and it's 11 o'clock, little past 11 here, and he has obligations early in the morning, I'm sure, and I do as well. So we're going to get Jason back on here, hopefully in the next couple of weeks, and we're going to cover some more public land stuff. I'd love to hear you guys' feedback on what Jason was talking about. And feel free to shoot me a message if you want to hear something specific from Jason. We can put it in there and dive deeper into it. And if you're having some trouble finding sign, or you want to dig deeper into maybe pressure on public lands, I don't know, shoot me a message. Let's talk about it. Let's get it on here, and let's see if we can help you out. Thank you guys for listening, and we'll see you on the next show.